questions, I believe. Yes.
I would ask Dr. Pedatsur to answer or to relate to three problems in his concept of defense, or not defense in the strict meaning of the word, of strategy, let's say. One is it neglects, in one way or another, a strange love scenario on the side of the Iranians, say, which the leadership of Iran does not necessarily want a war, but somebody decides that it's his duty and to hell with consequences. Secondly, it neglects the possibility of an honest mistake on our part. This did happen several times during the Cold War, where flocks of geese alerted or may change the defense status of the United States retaliatory force. But because of the time constants and the distances between the Soviet Union and the United States, which are considerably longer than the distances and time constants between Israel and Iran, this still is a possibility. And finally, if I understand it correctly, this suggestion of firing on detection of any missile going west, firing the full retaliatory force of Israel, leaves the decision for the next war in the hand of some young captain or even major who will detect something honestly, it will be something honest, and fire the missiles. Because again, because of the time constants, that poor major will not have time to call the prime minister and ask for advice or a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Strangelove is dead already, but let's talk about what will happen when Iran will have the nuclear weapons. What I believe will happen, that it will be the interest of both sides to develop an outline between the two sides. And then we can avoid mistakes, because it will be their interest to avoid mistakes as it will be our interest. And again, a nuclear world is very dangerous, yes, I agree. But this was the case in the Cold War. We have, the question is always, what is the alternative? And this is the only alternative that I can see, that we are based our policy on deterrence.
I ask the next ones that are asking to ask short questions that are ending with a question mark. So,
Two short questions. One for Uzi. Why do you only mention the ballistic threat and not the cruise threat?
Well,
and the other one, then I'll let... you're talking, Pedatsur, about the nuclear threat, but what about the chemical threat? Would you also go to a deterrence on this type of threat?
Yeah, I didn't mention cruise first because I need to concentrate on something. If I talk about the general threat, I could talk about air-launched missiles, not just cruise missiles. But specifically, right now, the cruise missile threat to Israel is non-nuclear. And because of the lower carrying capability, probably not within the reach of any prospective nuclear power around us for a while, this is a more distant prospect. We'll have perhaps to deal with it as nuclear threat, not as a conventional threat. But actually, the first part of my answer was right. I had to focus on something.
Regarding the chemical threat, it happened in the past and it worked. The deterrence worked. Against Syria, for example, they had chemical missiles during the 73 war. The IDF was very close to Damascus. Damascus, they didn't use it. Against Saddam Hussein in 91, he had ballistic missiles with chemical warheads. He didn't use them, and his son-in-law, who defected to Jordan, he was in charge of the chemical weapons. And they asked him in Jordan, why didn't you use the chemical weapons? And he said, we were afraid of the Israeli nuclear retaliation.
And the guy with the jacket.
I'd like to ask Igor Sutyagin from RUSI London. I'd like to ask that question to Dr. Pedatsur. It was 30 years ago when, not Major, it was Lieutenant Colonel Nikolai Petrov, who has realized that sunrise over Great Lakes in America was not actually the missile attack against the Soviet Union. And he was brave enough to violate all his instructions and to inform superiors that it was a mistake. But it was 35 minutes for him to think. In the Israeli case, that captain and major would not have 35 minutes. It will be 5 to 7 minutes. And hotline, well, Iranian president might be sunbathing somewhere. And so there wouldn't be even 7 minutes to decide to reach him and what to do in this situation.
Let's hope that we'll have brave majors in our side. There is no other answer. If not, let's hope that it will not happen like it didn't happen during the 40 years of the Cold War. I don't have answer for all the questions, but you have to base your policy on something. And I hope that we'll have such officers in what probably we have over there, that they will be brave enough and they'll have the technology to know what is coming and to decide in 7 minutes what to do.
A question to Reuven. It seems to me that you don't pay attention, or you argue that there is a contradiction between deterrence and defense. And I think Uzi pointed out that in terms of the survivability of a second strike capability, in the case of Israel, let's say, missile defense could contribute, in fact, to enhanced deterrence by Israel against Iran within the Israeli-Iranian case. So it seems to me that there is a conceptual problem with your argumentation, and that is that there is a contradiction, a basic contradiction between the two. In the superpower case, this was a different case, because in order to defend all the nuclear capabilities of both sides, there was a need for a tremendous amount of deployment of defensive systems. It seems to me that it is different in the Israeli versus the Iranian case.
On the contrary, because in the case of Israel, one missile on Tel Aviv, we cannot.
I'm talking about defending second strike.
We don't have to defend the second strike capability, because if we are talking about submarines, we don't have to defend them. But if the message to the other side is we are trying to defend, this is the wrong message.
Defending the capabilities.
So I say that we don't have to defend the second strike capability. You don't have to defend the submarines.
Okay. More questions? Yes.
You don't mention the consideration that a nuclear weapon or a non-conventional weapon will be leaked to a non-nation organization like Al-Qaeda, etc. What are your idea about that, and what is the response of us in the matter that this weapon will be leaked to these organizations?
Let's hope that will not happen. We have to do our best, not just us, in order to prevent them from possessing non-conventional missiles. It's not so easy to operate nuclear missiles by a terrorist organization.
Thank you. My name is Simon. It's kind of a question which goes from the previous question. We're all talking about nuclear capability of some sensible Iran, but the regime might change, and we are talking about the day after they have nuclear capability. And let's say the nuclear weapon falls into un-rational hands. So it might be some kind of question to Reuven and to Uzi. If it falls in unrational hands of Iran, the med doesn't have any sense anymore because they won't be afraid of the second strike. And for the Reuven, the question is, I think still if it falls into unrational hands, we do need the BMD strategy. Thank you.
The first question about a non-rational player. Let's first talk about Iran. Iran is, to say that Iran is non-rational, especially in these days, after the successful diplomatic campaign, which is brilliant. I'd say who is not rational here? I'm not sure in the Middle East. So they are very rational. They are very radical. That's something else. They want us dead, but they want to do it in a rational way. So they are rational players, and with that I think the deterrence is possible, relying on the fact that if we have reliable secondary strike capability and survivable second strike capability, not on uniad, dyad or triad. Nobody believes a uniad. It's not reliable. So the fact that you can readily survive one arm of your retaliation is the United States and Soviet Union went into triads. So when we are doing that, this is rational. You're playing a rational. If it becomes non-rational game, the question is not specific to Israel. The most fear in the world now is about Pakistan, not about Iran. Because Pakistan is a non-state. Iran is a state, a very strong state. Pakistan is a failed, a semi-failed state. What happens if their arsenal goes to anywhere? Then everything is open, everything goes. But I agree with Reuven that the nature of the threat and the technical side will probably not a nuclear missile threat, because it's not easy to operate. No nuclear missile unless you're talking about militias, a country falling apart, not terrorists. Part of the country becomes it. In that case, of course, missile defense gives you some modicum of added insurance. I wouldn't like to live in such a world, but it gives you a modicum of insurance, and because there is no deterrence against that. If you're talking about nuclear weapons arriving without missile, this is a threat of nuclear terror, which is widely discussed, but it has to be dealt like a terror threat, not a super terror, not like a missile threat. And then it's completely different and out of my scope at this point.
I totally agree with Zuzi.
Hey, that's nice.
Thank you very much. Pierre Shimunovic, I'm the Croatian ambassador to Israel. I have a question for Dr. Pedatsur. The scenario you are outlining, if I can guess, suggests a change in the Israel's declaratory policy, which is relying upon the notion of Israel not being the first to introduce nuclear weapons in the Middle East. What would be, in your analysis, political and strategic fallout of such change, if that would be a change? Thank you.
Yes, Israel will have to abandon the ambiguity and to declare an open nuclear policy. Nothing will happen. Nothing. They say that this will give incentive to the countries in the area to develop nuclear weapons. No, they know that we have nuclear weapons. It didn't change it. It will not change anything.
Okay. More questions?
Yeah, I'm Czech ambassador and I used to be the Czech negotiator on the missile defense with U.S. I have a question for Ruan. I still don't understand if there is an agreement, and I think there is an agreement, that it's gonna never be hermetic proof, the missile defense. And it's 90%, 80%, 60%, whatever, or 0%. Then how that fact and that understanding really creates a notion that there will not be the reliability of the counterattack and of the mutual assured destruction.
I don't understand the question.
Well, there is, if everyone believes that if one missile or 3 missiles are fired to Tel Aviv and that they will be intercepted, then, no, if everyone believed that they would be intercepted 100%, then it would deteriorate the concept of the mutual assured destruction that Israel would be waiting into firing immediately. This will not happen.
Of course not.
So why you think that the Iranians will not believe that you will fire destructively immediately after the missiles are launched? Why you think
they are going to believe that we are going to use our weapons? That's the reason that why they are not going to use their missiles.
And the
For
fact
this
that
we don't need defense.
So it doesn't add any more calculations into Iranians that even if they fire, then it may be intercepted, so it doesn't make...
No, because they know what you know, that there is no hermetic defense. And if they want to try, and if they want to destroy Israel, they know that there is no hermetic defense. So we have to deter them and tell them, don't even think of trying to use your missiles.
This I agree. I don't
I know
think
it's
how
very
much.
difficult
I
for-
don't mean how much I don't only understand how this deteriorate, how the missile defense deteriorates.
Because
this
if
equation.
you deploy missile defense, what is the message? We are trying to defend. But the message should be, we are not trying to defend. Don't even think of using your missiles. Because there is no hermetic defense. In our case, not hermetic defense is not a solution. So don't even try. I know from a psychological point of view, it's very difficult to think about abandoning a technology that could intercept several percentage of missiles. No, it's very difficult. That's what happened to McNamara. It was very difficult for him to tell the generals, I know that we have the technology, but we have to give up.
Thank you, Reuven. We are having now a coffee break, and we'll be back at 12 a.m. sharply.